Hi Sectus, this is lesson 4 of argumentative essay writing. Okay, now before we begin, make sure that you have your argumentative essay writing worksheet with you. There will be notes that you need to take down today. Okay, alright, now so in the previous lessons, you've already learned about the differences between discursive and argumentative essays through question analysis. You learned how to identify argumentative essay questions. You have learned the structure of an argumentative essay, as well as the writing of thesis statements, peel paragraphs, counter arguments, rebuttals, as well as conclusion. Now, and lastly, we want to look at the use of persuasive language, or in other words, we want to look at the language features of argumentative essays. Okay, now we want to learn how to use language skillfully to help to persuade your reader. All right, now before I continue, why do we even want to look at language features in the first place? Now, the reason is because when it comes to discursive and argumentative essay questions, the language that you use makes a big impact on how your reader actually receives your ideas, of how receptive your readers would be towards what you are trying to argue for. Okay, now, and also when it comes to language features, a discursive and argumentative essay, the language features will be drastically different from when, for example, you're writing a personal recount, which again will be quite different from when you're writing a narrative, which then again is different when you compare to, for example, writing a speech or writing a letter when it comes to your situational writing. Okay, now, so because of these differences in the different kinds of writing that we're doing, we want to focus on language features when it comes to discursive or argumentative essays. All right. Now, so the key thing that we want to look at today is how to use language skillfully to help to persuade your reader. All right. Now, so why is it important to focus on language when writing argumentative essays? All right. Now, so the skillful use of language features can help to express your ideas in a clear and specific manner, so that the reader knows exactly what point you are trying to make. All right, that's the first reason. Now, the second reason is because you want to display your maturity and objectivity such that the reader will take your writing seriously. And lastly, you want to provide clear direction in your writing and make it easy to follow and navigate. Okay, now, so let's take a look at some of the language features in argumentative essays. Now, firstly, we have the use of present tense. Okay, now, when it comes to talking about current problems or issues, you should use present tense consistently unless you are talking about an event that happened in the past, or if you are talking about something that could happen in the future. So, if, for example, you are talking about space exploration today, all right, or you're talking about the advancement in science today, naturally you use present tense. But if you are talking about, for example, space exploration 50 years ago, maybe the moon landing, the first time Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin actually stepped on the moon, you naturally use past tense. Likewise, when it comes to talking about future events, when, for example, you are talking about the possibilities of artificial intelligence, all these would require you to use future tense to talk about them. All right. Now, but if you're talking about current problems or issues, you use present tense. So some examples: students nowadays are, or Singapore society is. All right. Now the second example or second language feature over there would be the scope. Okay. Now, so why do we pay attention to the scope words that we use? It's because you want to make clear the extent your point is covering. Okay, and what do I mean by extent? It could be in terms of your time period, it could be in terms of geographical coverage. Okay, now that also involves the use of qualifiers to shape your point. What do I mean by the use of qualifiers? Now, many times students like to use words like always, never, everyone, everything, every time, things like that. Now, what are the problems with these words or phrases? Now, the problem is that these words or phrases, they are highly absolute. It means that it leaves no room for alternatives. Okay, now so instead of using these words, you might want to use some qualifying terms, okay, some words to scope the point that you are discussing. All right, so for example, if you're talking about climate change, in recent years, people's attention to climate change has been increasing, yet actions towards climate change has not been increasing at the same pace. Something like this. Okay, so instead of saying that no one cares about climate change, you shape your point such that it actually corresponds to real life. Now, real life is a lot more complicated, so words like everything, everyone, all the time, they usually don't carry. Okay, all right, now, and the third language feature will be when it comes to your tone, you want to maintain an objective formal tone and avoid using emotionally charged words or phrases. Okay, so if we look at the case study of Amos Yee, for example, when it comes to looking at free speech, okay, when you say Amos Yee's silly and idiotic use of words, immediately the reader is thinking, does this writer know what he is talking about when he chooses to use words like these? Okay, so instead of using words that are overly casual, words that convey too much emotion, okay, which then makes you appear subjective rather than objective, okay, you change the choice of words such that you maintain an objective formal tone. And lastly, will be looking at signposting and cohesive devices, which are actually connecting words or phrases that direct your reader through your essay, as well as stitch your essay together such that it becomes one seamless, coherent essay. Okay, let's take a look at some examples. Okay, what do we mean by signposting or cohesive devices? Okay, uh, they could actually be involved in the sequencing of points. Okay, when you're talking about your first point, you say to begin with or firstly, then move on to secondly, initially, finally, next. Okay, now all these words, they are actually quite helpful for you because it links the different paragraphs together. All right, it makes reading much more logical for your reader. Otherwise, you might face an issue of having abrupt or awkward transitions in between. All right. Now, you could also be cross-referencing to other parts of the essay, for example, as mentioned above, or as I would discuss below. Okay, you could also be adding similar ideas or details, for example, furthermore, moreover, similarly, in fact. Okay, or you could be introducing contrasting points or sections. Okay, you use words like in contrast, on the other hand, however, although, yet. Okay, now all these you need to learn how to use them in the right uh, and the right points of your essay such that they tie up your entire essay together. So think of it like a needle and a thread. Okay, when you're trying to stitch different patches of cloth together into one big piece, you think of signposting in the same way. You use these words to link all the different parts in your essay together. Okay, now, so what you'll be doing as your holiday homework, all right, over May would be to attempt an essay writing practice. Now, so if you look at your worksheet page 8, you will need to plan and write an essay from the questions on page 8. Okay, now, so let's take a look at the worksheet more closely. Okay, now, so this is the worksheet that we're talking about, okay? Uh, you will need to write a full argumentative essay. All right. Now, what I want you to do, take 1 minute to skim through the 4 questions first. Okay. Now, so on foolscap paper, you are to write a full argumentative essay in response to one of the following questions below. You are reminded to recap what you have learned about argumentative essay writing so far and use the knowledge to write this essay. Now, so there are 4 questions over here. I'm going to go through with you some kind of question analysis such that it makes it a bit easier for you to tackle these questions. Okay? Alright, now let's take a look at question 1. Okay, we cannot be denied our individual human rights under any circumstance. Do you agree? Now, so such a question, okay, it's very typical of an argumentative essay. There is a statement that is given over here. Alright, there is a statement, or rather a contention. Alright, and then asking you whether you agree or disagree. Okay. Alright, now so let's take a look at the statement a bit more closely. Alright, now so we cannot be denied our individual human rights under any circumstance. Okay, now so what do these words actually mean? Okay, now let's take a look at first of all, denied. Okay, so perhaps what denied could mean would be where human rights are oppressed. Okay, maybe they have been deprived, or maybe they could be taken away. All right. Now, individual human rights, okay, you can define it in your essay. All right. I won't define it for you. Okay. Now, so the last phrase over here, this is a tricky one. Under any circumstance. Okay. Now, so what could this mean? It could mean that that means it regardless of whatever situation one is found in. Okay. Now, so it doesn't matter what kind of situation it is or what kind of human rights, okay, as long as it is a human right, people cannot be denied their own individual human rights, okay? Now, so you need to, when you're looking at these questions, when you're looking at this question, you need to come up with points that could agree, points that could disagree with the statement. Then you decide what is your view towards this question, okay? And then you argue, do you do you agree or do you disagree? Okay. Now remember, when you are arguing, you need to have a thesis statement. That is very important. A thesis statement anchors your entire essay, so do not forget about your thesis statement. Okay, now let's take a look at question 2. Now, question 2. What is your opinion on teenagers' use of social media? Okay. Now, so when we look at a question like this, the word your opinion, naturally it means that it wants your view, which makes it an argumentative essay. Alright. Now, teenagers will be a scope, okay? It means that when it comes to teenagers' use of social media, alright, what is your view on it? Okay. Now, so your examples must relate to teenagers. Okay. Now, and lastly, when it comes to social media, you might want to define it. Alright. You might want to give certain examples. Okay. And you might also want to describe, okay, or you might want to elaborate on the phenomenon. Why do teenagers use social media? What kind of social media do they use? What do they use social media for? What are the impacts? What are the benefits, disadvantages? So all these you can all think about it from the phrase social media. So you want to elaborate on the phenomenon. Okay. All right. All good. Now, let's take a look at, I know you can't reply me, I'm just asking to make sure that you're okay. All right, now let's take a look at question 3. Environmental protection is a responsibility for all. Sounds like the previous one, under any circumstance. All right, now, so what are your views? So naturally, this is an argumentative. Okay, let me just erase that. All right. Now, so what are your views when it comes to the phrase environmental protection is a responsibility for all? Okay, now so this is your topic over here. Environmental protection is a responsibility for all. Now, the tricky part over here is actually the word that's circled, the word all. When it says the word all, who does it actually refer to? We know that it refers to everyone, but who actually falls under this category of all? Okay, now so does it refer to governments? Does it refer to businesses? Does it refer to individuals? Okay. Does it refer to industries? Certain industries are known to have a lot of environmental impact. Does it relate to certain households? Okay. Does it relate to the rich or the poor? Because we know that the rich versus the poor, there seems to be some kind of disparity, some kind of difference when it comes to their environmental impacts because of their lifestyle choices. Okay, now so there are various things they need to think about it. Okay, is environmental responsibility, is environmental protection a responsibility for all? Okay, tricky question over here. All right, and lastly, question 4. Do you agree that youth offenders should not face the same penalties as adult criminals? Okay, so do you agree? Again, this is an argumentative essay. It wants your view on this. It wants you to argue your view. It makes it an argumentative. Okay, youth offenders is a very long statement, should not face the same penalties as adult criminals. Okay, so it requires you to do a comparison between the two, the youth offenders versus adult criminals. All right, and how could you break it down even further? Okay, you could say, okay, same penalties. Yes, they should have the same penalties. All right, and then you list down your points. Okay, they should have different penalties. And then you go ahead and you list down your reasons. And finally, okay, let me just go back for a while. And finally, you come together and think of what is your view on this. Okay. All right. Now, so as you can see in this question analysis, okay, there are words over here that you must pay attention of. You must be very careful. All right. You must have a very clear idea. Okay. For example, when it comes to under any circumstance, okay, is it in all situations? When it comes to, for example, individual human rights, are all human rights the same? Okay, so does it mean that we cannot be denied our basic human rights, or we cannot be denied all some of our human rights, but others can, there can be some kind of compromise? Okay, question 2. Okay, teenagers' use of social media. You must be very aware of what are teenagers' habits when it comes to social media. Okay, you must be aware of how it impacts everyone, not just your own experience or your friend's experience. Okay, that is actually quite limited. What is teenager as a whole cohort, as an entire social group? What are their use of what is their use of social media like? Okay, so question 2, pay attention to that. Do not just focus on your own experience or your friend's experience. Now, environmental protection is a responsibility for all. Again, a tricky question. Who does this all refer to? Okay, when it comes to responsibility, okay, how far should people be responsible? Because when it comes to responsibility, maybe some could be more responsible than the others, or maybe some needs to be more responsible than the others. All right. Okay, so another point that you need to take note of, all right, is that when it comes to uh, your thesis statement, when it comes to your stand, it's not a simple yes or no. It's not a simple I agree or I disagree. Okay, there are different gradients, different shades of it that you can choose. Alright, so you need to be very clear of that. And lastly, do you agree that youth offenders should not face the same penalties as adult criminals? Come up with the points, the reasons, and then decide on your stand. Okay, alright. Now, so this hope this question analysis will help you to pay attention to some of the words in the question. Alright. Now, your teacher will give you further instructions as to how you should complete your work, as to how you should submit your work. Alright, but you need to work on this over the May holidays on your foolscap paper. Okay. Alright, if there are, so this is the end of the fourth lesson, the fourth and last lesson on argumentative essay writing. If there are any questions, okay, relating to any one of the lessons or any one of these questions over here, do approach your teachers to go and clarify. Okay? Alright, if not, that will be all. Thank you very much.